back to another episode of Sit and Spin with me, your host, Joe Royland. Sorry I wasn't able to do a show for you last week, but as usual, life's been getting in the way. And I also had to change around the order of what I was planning to do shows from now to the end of the year, because the show I originally wanted to do last week required a little bit more attention to be paid to it. So instead, I'm going to go with what we're going to be talking about today, which is the new InXS Kick 30 30th Anniversary box set. Now, this is a 4-disc collection based on InXS's biggest album of all time and one of my favorite records of all time, the album Kick. Now, a little background information on the album. It was a 6th studio album from the band. It sold over 20 million copies worldwide, 8 million of those in the US alone. It spawned 4 top 10 singles: New Sensation, which hit number 3, Never Tear Us Apart, which hit number 7, Devil Inside, which hit number 2, and Need You Tonight, which hit number 1. Also, a couple of other singles out the album, which didn't make the top 40, but did well enough. The album peaked at number 3 on the US Billboard Top 200, spent 79 weeks on the Billboard Top 200 at that, 22 consecutive of which were all in the top 10. The band also picked up 5 Moon Man Awards at the 1988 MTV Video Award Show for all the videos they did for the record. And with this album, the band had slowly been rising a wave of popularity that was growing and growing and growing with each album. And they wanted to make an album full of singles for this record. They had a specific goal set in mind for this. And as a result of that, for the first time ever, all the songs on the album were written by the team of Andrew Ferris and Michael Hutchence. Andrew Ferris, who's the middle Ferris brother, he does most of the songwriting for the band, although all the band members have contributed to songwriting before and since. He predominantly plays keyboards as well as plays guitar and other instruments. And he does most of the music side, whereas Michael Hutchence, the late lead singer of the band, one of my favorite lead singers ever. When he died, it was a big blow to me, but he usually wrote all the lyrics for the songs. And since they had had the most success with hit singles for the band in the past, it was decided they would write all the music for this record, and the rest of the band went along with this. Now, this is a record that's come out in several versions before. You could say I am extremely well versed in this album. I have the original 1987 CD. I have the original 1987 vinyl version of the album. I have the 1989 Japanese special edition version of the album, which has a different cover and also features some B-sides, outtakes, single mixes. I have the 2002 remastered special edition version of the album, which also features some of those same and a few different B-sides versions, actually. I also have the Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs vinyl version of the album for improved sound quality listening. And there was a 25th anniversary edition of the album, which I don't have because it was only released overseas. And for the amount of money it would have cost me to import it and get it here, I actually paid less for this. So I just held off. I'm glad I did, because then this came out this year. Now, this is the new 4-disc collection, included in which are Disc 1 is the original album remastered by Alex Gordon at Abbey Road Studios. And unfortunately, as is the case with a lot of remastering today, it's not as great as it could be, not as great as you hope. If you remember with the episode we talked about Prince's Purple Rain remaster, kind of suffers from some of the same things in that it's very compressed. It's the trend today to just compress stuff, or brickwall it as they call it, to make it more palatable to today's younger listeners. And the problem with that is it sucks out most of the dynamic range out of the songs, particularly sometimes in the bass. It just becomes too mid-rangey, gets a little bit shrill on the ears at times. This one's not terrible. The interesting thing is that it sounds pretty good listening to it on headphones off of my iPod. And the thing of it is, it's designed specifically for that. That's what most young people today are listening to their music on. It's designed to sound good in that kind of a setting. But when you play it like on an open air system or like in a car stereo, that's where some of the deficiencies become very noticeable. And you can see what it's lacking in it. Some places the drums are a little too loud and booming. Some places the bass just seems to not be there at all. On the plus side, there's definitely a lot more separation between instruments. You can definitely, and the vocal passages where you can hear a lot of things that you couldn't hear before. Unfortunately, it's just to the detriment that you lose some of the low end of the mix, which is not cool. If I had to pick a mix out of all the versions I've heard so far as CD or digital wise go, I'd have to say overall the 2002 remix is the one you'd want to get. This was done by Don Bartley, Andrew Ferris of the band, and Mark Opitz, who's a producer who's worked with the band on several of their albums. They redid this, the band's X album, and Welcome to Wherever You Are, all at the same time in 2002, and issued all of them. And this is probably the best overall sounding mix in that it's not brick-walled. It's improved from the original album mixes. Like the big problem with the original one and a lot of CDs back then is they really lacked low end. This makes up for that, but it still has the dynamic range, and even though it doesn't have quite the clean separation that the newer versions of the album have done, still pretty much a pleasant listen overall. The album for the 25th anniversary, in fact, the band's entire catalog was remixed back in 2011 for a box set that was done by Giovanni Sciota, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name there, who they put out a complete album box set on vinyl and CD, and they did a 25th anniversary, as I said earlier, version of the album that only came out overseas. That stuff never got released here because band's popularity kind of waned in the US, but it was always doing much better over in Europe and UK. I wish they would put that out over here because it's pretty great. I've actually heard the whole thing and it sounds pretty good. Overall, his work on the other NX albums is pretty spectacular compared to some of the original versions of the album. Okay, now discs 2 and 3 of this set collect the album's B-sides, outtakes, single and 12-inch mixes, as well as some demo and live tracks spread out over 2 discs. It's 27 tracks in all, various versions of the album. Being the big fan of InXS that I am and of this record, I have all the original 7 inches and 12 inches, both promo and commercially available versions that have come out. So I have a lot of this stuff already, but what's really nice is to have them all presented here in this package. And again, much like the Prince Purple Rain set, for some reason the discs 2 and 3 don't seem to suffer the same fate that the main album does. I don't know why. It's both remastered by Alex Gordon at Abbey Road, but they just sound a little better. They don't seem to have the same sound limit problems that the main disc does. Maybe because they didn't put as much focus into it, I don't know, but for whatever reason they sound better. A lot of great stuff. If you're, an InXS completist, it's great to have all this stuff together in one package for those tracks, which is cool. Now, disc 4 was the main reason I purchased the set to begin with, and it was the biggest thing interested of it, and how I found out about it. The InXS's website ran a commercial about it, and it is a Blu Ray disc that features the album in high-res audio in 2 versions. There's a PCM stereo version, but the real piece of resistance for me was an immersive Dolby Atmos, which is a step beyond 7.1 surround, that was done by Giles Martin and Sam Okell. Now, Giles Martin is the son of noted Beatles producer George Martin, and Giles and Sam are the same 2 guys who worked on the recent Beatles Sgt. Pepper's 50th anniversary box set and did the Atmos surround sound mix for that as well. Now, for the most part, it's pretty great, if perhaps a bit too discreet for my personal taste. On many of the album's single tracks, like the songs that were released as singles, you can really hear some nice use of the soundscape. However, there were times that I wish they could perhaps push the envelope a little further in really letting you know that you were listening to a surround mix. I also found that the low end was a little lacking in places, that I almost had to wonder at times if my subwoofer was even turned on or not, but I knew that wasn't the case because when you switch over to just the main menu, the music playing in that and the PCM version of the album are just booming in comparison. Now, the plus side of the fact that it's mastered low is good. That means there's more dynamic range, so that if you want to crank it up, the album holds its integrity at a louder volume without becoming ear bleeding. Now, probably one of the issues that I might be having in my own interpretation of this mix is the fact that it is a 7.1 and I only have a 5.1 surround system, and the Blu-ray just, you know, down mixes it to that, and it might just be that something's getting lost in that transition going from 7.1 to 5.1. I'm sure if I had a Dolby Atmos 7.1 surround system, was listening to it on a nice system like that, I'd probably be super blown away, and some of the issues that I have might not exist. So I can't say it's all the fault of this. It might just be the fault in my playback system for this album, but overall, it's really nice. It's a nice little treat. Not as awesomely mind-blowing as I hoped it could be, but pretty damn great nonetheless. Now, aside from hearing the album in those two versions, you also get on the Blu-ray 8 promo videos for some of the album's tracks. There's promo videos for Guns in the Sky, New Sensation, Devil Inside, Need You Tonight, Mediate, Never Tear Us Apart, Mystify, and there's also a new 2017 promo video for the album's title track, Kick. Now again, there are pros and cons to these as well. On the plus side, you get to watch all of these videos with the new audio mixes, either in the Atmos or the PCM versions of the album. And that's cool to be able to hear it in that sound while you're watching it. But on the downside, because they use the new mixes for the audio, you also lose all the unique intros to the original video versions of the songs, particularly on Never Tear Us Apart, Mystify, and New Sensation, which all had these like unique little intros. Specifically, Never Tear Us Apart has a special intro piece of music that was recorded just to drag the video out a little bit longer for what they were filming, and the only place you can get the version of the song with that intro is from that video. It's a shame they couldn't have just remastered the audio that was on the video, probably because they didn't have all the original bed music for that, and they would have had to remaster it just from like a 2-track stereo, and wouldn't have sounded as good, or it may have cost more money. But it's unfortunate that they couldn't have at least even done a version of it, somehow ripped it and just put it for the CDs on this album. That would have been great. The only other way I have it is either to listen to the DVD collection of their greatest hits that they have out, or the greatest videos, or the video versions they had that it showed up on a couple of different InXS videos in the past. And like, I basically, in the old days, I just would rip it right from the VHS or from the DVD and burn it onto a cassette or CD for that. But that aside, one small glitch. Now, in this package, you open it up, you get the set where all 4 CDs are in there, or discs I should say, because one of them is a Blu-ray. Obviously one's missing because we're listening to it right now. As well as this awesome 44-page book with more promo pictures from the album inside. There's a ton of other pictures, never before seen, some that have been seen, collector's things, like different things on here. All sorts of essays on the behind-the-scenes stuff of the album, the makings of the songs, the makings of the videos, their song lyrics, tour diary excerpts, in-studio written tracks, all sorts of great stuff to be found in this book, which is awesome. Lots of great inside stories, for instance, where you find out the story that the album almost didn't happen, in a way. Basically, when InXS had completed this album, they were like all psyched. They thought, we got this masterpiece of their album. Their manager, Chris Murphy, listened to it, thought the same thing. He was all excited. He brings it to Atlantic Records in New York, to the label president, Doug Morris, who sits there, puts his feet up on the desk, listens to the whole album without saying a word, and when it's done says, I'll give you $1 million to record another record. I don't know what to do with this. It was so far ahead of its time at the time, mixing elements of hip-hop, that wasn't even really breaking yet. Like, it was ahead of the cusp of what was going on at the time, just mixing elements of black music and rock and stuff, and nobody else had really done this to the extent InXS had done it at the time. And the rock department didn't know what to do with it. It was the dance and R&B departments didn't know what to do with it, because they're like, this is a white band, what are we going to do with these? And the only place that Chris Murphy found any support was in the college label department of Atlantic Records. And basically what he ended up having to do was go to take every penny he had, every penny of the bands, without telling them, and basically just kind of bet the farm on putting his own belief behind this album and knowing that it would work. And he went to like every college station. He hired all these promotional people all across the country to work the album in every college market everywhere in the US, and just basically built the album up kind of like a homegrown thing, and just pushed it at radio, and whenever they would get new college ads and build it up, and then they had the band tour colleges and smaller venues, and then slowly work their way up to bigger and bigger and bigger venues, till it got to the point where Atlantic couldn't ignore the album anymore and had to issue it because there was just so much demand for it. And rightly so. It turned out to be a good thing to them because it ended up being one of their best-selling catalog titles of all time. And it wasn't just Atlantic in the US either. He basically got the phone call from Mercury Records in Europe and WIA in Australia, basically saying the same thing, like, what are they thinking with this record? What is this, you know? But he knew, and the band knew, that they were onto something that was ahead of the time and it still holds up to this day. Still one of my favorite records ever. It was one of my top 3 records of all 1987 and into 1988 as well. Somewhat bit more in 1988 because the album didn't come out until late November of 1987, so I really listened to it probably more in 1988 than I did in 1987, whereas the other top 2 albums in my top 3 came out earlier in 1987, so I had more time to listen to and appreciate them as well. One of those, we may still be doing a 30th anniversary box set on that as well. The other one has kind of gone by, so it's kind of pointless to bring it up now, but if you know me, you know what it is. You probably know what the other one is too, but if not, you'll have to wait and find out. See, but in the meantime, if you're an InXS fan, even if you're not, and you just want to get a really nice package of the Kick album, and you've never had it, you want to get a nice version of it, and you have want to hear it in Dolby Atmos surround, it's a really good set to pick up. Really cheap. It's like less than $30 for this, which is a bargain for a 4-disc set, especially with the book included as well and everything you get with it. Not disappointed in that aspect at all. You know, it may not have 100% lived up to what I hoped it would be like, but I'm a bit of a fanatic, so I kind of have that bias going against me as well. But very psyched to have this 30th anniversary version of InXS's Kicks, one of my favorite albums of all time. That's our show. I've rambled way too long. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, hopefully, it's going to be a big showdown. It's good to be talking about 2 records, not just 1, but 2 records. And that's why it kind of took me a little bit longer to get around to it. So tune in to find out what that's going to be. It's going to be a battle royal between 2 albums, and we'll see which one we like best. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time on Sit and Spin. See you then. Hey, just a little addendum to this week's show, because I was going to edit it and looked at the artwork I did for it and realized I completely forgot to bring up this point, which is that for you vinyl fans, there is a vinyl version available for Kick 30th Anniversary. It does not have any of the bonus tracks on it. It's just a straight up album, but it is pressed on a 2-album set at 45 RPM and half speed mastered at that, which means that they do it at the best possible quality that they can. And with the 45 RPM, the grooves are wider, so you get much more bass resonance, and it's just better overall sound presentation in general. There was a limited edition red vinyl version that's now out of stock, out of print, I should say, but you can still get the black vinyl version of it. I think there may be a delay on that coming out, and it might not be coming out to the beginning of the new year, but from what I've heard, it may still be available. You can get that at the band's You Discover music store, along with the entire original band's catalog. You can't get the Switch album, that's the only thing that's not available, but everything from the first album, InXS, all the way up through Elegantly Wasted are all available on vinyl now. You can get them there, so if you're a vinyl fan and you have holes in your collection for InXS, or especially the albums that never got released here in the US, like Welcome to Wherever You Are, one of my favorite records by the band, Full Moon, Dirty Heart, and Elegantly Wasted. All of those are available on vinyl now. You can get them through the You Discover site, along with Kick 30th Anniversary. Just had to add that in, just a quick little thing that I forgot about, and thanks again for tuning in to the show. We'll see you next time.